The Royal Commission into Juvenile Detention in the Northern Territory is continuing today. The Commission has heard from a police investigator who looked into allegations of abuse against the same youth justice officer that allegedly filmed detainees on Snapchat. Our reporter Georgia Hitch has been following the hearings and joins me now. Georgia, what were the allegations?
Well, the allegations were against a former Youth Justice Officer, Conan Zamolo, who we have heard from in the Commission before. He was the Youth Justice Officer, as you said, that filmed detainees on Snapchat. One film was of detainees being forced to eat bird faeces, and that was among others that were found on his phone. And Detective Sergeant Kirsten Engels gave evidence today that she was looking into allegations that Mr. Zamolo had also filmed detainees in a shower, and this was a complaint that was made by a particular detainee known as AT, but it was also corroborated by a second boy in a youth detention facility as well. And we had heard about this video before now, but we hadn't heard about the investigation that had been done into this complaint. And there were some questions that were raised by the counsel assisting Peter Morrissey about the detective sergeant's handling of that investigation and why she hadn't decided to make lines of inquiry that she didn't. So she didn't speak to one of the other youth justice officers who had allegedly also seen the video, and she hadn't spoken to some of the other boys that were supposed to be in the showers at that time to find out whether it had happened and whether they could corroborate the story as well. So there were some questions around her handling of that investigation. And the other allegation that was made against Mr. Zamolo was that in one particular occasion, and this allegation was again made by this juvenile detainee AT, that at one point he was drinking from a water fountain and Mr. Zamolo came up behind him and started hitting him on his kneecaps with a torch. And at that point, he decided to run away to obviously get away from Mr. Zamolo and headed towards the dining room because apparently that's where the cameras were. And in his words, he thought that Mr. Zamolo was going to belt him, and so he wanted it to be caught on camera. And at some point, whether he was running in or out of the dining room, he was clotheslined by his neck and on his neck by another youth justice officer. And so at that point, he turned around, ran back to his cell where Mr. Zamolo met him again and started to repeatedly hit him on his knees with the torch until he yelled out to stop. So this was the allegation that AT put forward, and the questions were asked of Ms. Engels about what she had done and the investigations that she had made about that. And she was really questioned about why she had questioned Mr. Zamolo herself. It had never been put to him why he had done this, whether he had done it at all, and what his motivations were. And she said that there was a specific reason that she and her team had decided not to question Mr. Zamolo. This is the reason she gave.
So here you've got details that there was 3 hard hits at first and then continuous hitting when he curled up in a ball in his room, correct?
Yes.
There's no game you know of that involves that, is there? The game of hitting with a torch.
Yes, I believe there can be games that occur that are taken at the time that they were at.
So, Georgia, did anything come of the investigation into these allegations?
No, neither investigation led to criminal charges against Mr. Zamolo. And basically what Ms. Engels said was that they didn't think that they would have enough evidence to successfully prosecute either of the allegations. So in the Snapchat incident, they didn't have the actual video of these boys who were allegedly filmed in the shower, and she thought that there wouldn't be enough evidence otherwise to prosecute. But Mr. Morrissey pointed out that they had 2 witnesses corroborating the story, and that had she looked into more lines of inquiry, she may have been able to extend that amount of witnesses. And when it came to the allegations about the torch incident, as you just heard, she thought that Mr. Zamolo was really not acting out of malice. She thought that he was playing a game. One of the quotes, she described Mr. Zamolo as having the maturity only 1 notch above the children that he was overseeing. And so she really thought that he didn't intend to hurt this child, and that he was sort of wanting to get down on their level, be their friend, have that relationship with them. And Peter Morrissey said to that wasn't a defence, and that really he had assaulted this child, and that to prove that someone had assaulted someone, it wasn't about the intent to hurt, it was about the intent to assault. And by applying force, by hitting him with the torch, that was all that she really needed to do. And so again, there were questions raised again about her line of investigation and the decision not to prosecute those 2 allegations.
Georgia Hitch with the latest on the Royal Commission into Juvenile Detention in the Northern Territory. Many thanks.